some new information has come in regarding the production of Nintendo Switch 2. You guys know we've been covering this stuff as it drops, roughly once a month or so, for what is happening behind the scenes with manufacturing regarding Nintendo Switch 2. And a lot of this stuff is mostly interesting for two main reasons. The first one being that sometimes through methods like this, we are able to learn certain specs about the system that Nintendo has yet to fully reveal, such as 12 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage. All of this was stuff we were able to verify through shipping data between Nintendo, their parts makers, and the assemblers of the units. Now, the second part that's interesting about this is because Nintendo hasn't revealed the system, let alone told us when it's going to release, that actually means that we care a lot about the production numbers being used in order to make units and put the stuff together. Because if mass manufacturing and assembly has already begun, and say began a couple months ago, let alone began today, it could give us a good time frame reference for when the Nintendo Switch 2 could come out. And I've been saying for a while now, based on what we have seen in the data, that the first half of next year is essentially guaranteed. But we were missing some data from September, and now we seem to have that data thanks to a report over at Universal Nintendo. So we're going to hop over there in a moment and look at it, because in this report, we actually see the number of T239 SoCs that Nintendo had shipped to one of their main assemblers out in Vietnam. And the number is very large and goes on to support, because by the way, Nintendo has more than one assembler. It supports this notion that Nintendo's planning to have a ton of stock ready to go in the launch month of Nintendo Switch 2 to combat scalping. So let's go ahead and take a look at this report here over at Universal Nintendo again. This is in Portuguese, I believe, and has obviously translated here through machine learning. And it says Switch 2 NVIDIA's massive SoC shipments to Nintendo's contract assembly plant reinforce indication of mass production. RAM modules and various other components passed the hundreds of thousands mark in September. The successor to Nintendo Switch still remains a matter of information, with very few official details from Nintendo itself, which promises an announcement by the end of March 2025. However, tracking data on shipments between factories and assemblers that are contracted by Nintendo have been a great way to monitor the progress of both the production of the new console and some of the technical specifications about its components. User LIC, known mainly on the FamiBoards forum, continues to gather information about these shipments, and in new research already published on the forum and authorized by him for our sharing here at Universal Nintendo, reported that NVIDIA would have shipped more than 836,000 units of the SoC system on the chip T239 to a single Nintendo contract assembler in Vietnam, according to the data collected through September 2024. The SoC has already been confirmed to be part of the Nintendo Switch 2, and this large number of shipments could be an indication that factories are preparing to assemble the system while mass producing its components since at least the end of September this year. Thractor, another forum user, estimated that Nintendo has shelled out around $47 million to NVIDIA for the production and delivery of the SoCs in this batch that will integrate its new console, reinforcing the positive results that the company reported for its recent fiscal quarter, mainly pointed to the gaming sector that unites its video cards and cards for dedicated consoles. This is NVIDIA's own positive report. The company only supplies components of this type to Nintendo. LIC also pointed out in its research that more components registered significant shipment numbers until September, so through September, such as RAM memory modules, 803,500 units divided between manufacturers at Micron, Samsung, and Hynix. Those are the people making them. So the combined, essentially the 803,500 unit, that's what went to this Vietnam place to, assemble units, and that's just the 3 different manufacturers those RAM modules came from, in addition to UFS Storage, which is 290,000 units, which were supplied by Kioxia and Hynix. The next report on shipments between the factories and assemblies that is due to be shared is in early December, which will cover the numbers recorded in October. It is expected to bring more news regarding the mass production or assembly of the Nintendo's new console. So essentially the numbers we get in a week or two will confirm or deconfirm a couple of things. One, if the numbers remain high on all these components coming in, that's a heavy indication that naturally not only, mass production's at least begun, right? Like they've clearly are making tons and tons, millions of components, getting them out to assemblers. But the key thing is finished units leaving the assembler going back to Nintendo. We haven't seen any data like that yet. There have been some, like a handful of finished units leave and go back to Nintendo, but nothing that you would call mass production numbers. So what we're looking for in October is direct evidence that mass assembly has begun, mass final assembly. So this would be finished product, finished Joy-Cons, finished tablets in a box, maybe even retail boxes leaving the assembly place. So this, of course, is just looking at one of Nintendo's roughly half a dozen assemblers out there across several different countries, China, Vietnam, Taiwan, etc. So, of course, we're only tracking, this one because the data is publicly available. You can actually pay for an account at this website to get access to the exact numbers, but the shipments existing, that's all publicly trackable and provable. So we are pretty sure that this information's fairly legit. I went on the website. I was able to dig up that these shipments exist. I couldn't see the exact, unit numbers, but I have no reason to doubt that LIC, who seems to have a paid account there, is lying to us. I just don't see what there is to gain or benefit from that, especially since they're hiding all this, on Family Boards behind hidden posts. So it's not like they're trying to publicize this that much, but obviously over here, user Necro Felipe Lima, who we've talked about on the channel before, was able to get permission to post the numbers on his website, thus becoming sort of the public source for where this stuff came from, even though we're all aware that it came from over at Family Boards. Credit to him for properly sourcing all of that, of course. We'll put a link down to the hidden post on Family Boards that they linked on this article, as well as a link to the article itself here over on Universal Nintendo for you to dissect yourself and decide what to do with. For my part in talking about all of this, look, I don't know if the recent rumors and reports out there of a January reveal and a March release are happening, right? That's just a rumor. Don't really know. I do know that Pedro Henrique was very confident about it releasing in March, but he has decided that he's just not going to talk about it really anymore and just let Nintendo do their thing. So we're just going to sit back and go, well, is there some validity to this? I think so. What does this mean for when Nintendo releases it? Pretty much exactly what we knew earlier, and that is, well, it looks to me like first half of 2025 is almost impossible for Nintendo to skip unless they want millions and millions of units. I mean, think about this. 836,000 to be clear, of the T239 was shipped in September to this place for mass assembly. That's almost 1 million units just in one shipment, or multiple shipments, I guess, over the course of a month at one assembler. So Nintendo clearly plans to have several million of these available. Look, a March release isn't so crazy. If they started mass assembly in October, and they're assembling between 300 to 1 million units per month, even at this one factory, let's just say they're able to assemble 300,000, 400,000 units. That's one assembler. Toss on a handful more, also making the same production. You're looking at, a couple million of these produced a month, or at least assembled a month. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, look, you get to about 6.5 million by the time we get to March, which matches the rumors out there. Now, again, this doesn't mean that that's what Nintendo is doing, of course. We are just making a lot of guesses without the information, and the information we get's always 2 months old. So what we hear about in a week or two here is going to be from October, which will probably at least confirm or deconfirm if mass assembly has begun. Now, if mass assembly of finished products hasn't begun in October, it will be quite interesting to see, well, if they're still sending hundreds of thousands of components to this assembler, but this assembler hasn't even begun mass assembly yet, it would be quite strange. There's some people that think maybe all this got sent in September, and then there's like nothing that happens in October, and then assembly begins in November. But there's a lot of guesses out there. Right now, we just have to work with the available information we have. And what we do know is that the components for Nintendo Switch 2 are in mass production. Just factually, almost 1 million of the damn SoC got sent to one assembler in a single month. So I think we have a pretty good idea here, let alone the almost 800,000 plus units of RAM and everything. I think it's very clear that mass assembly has likely already begun at this point. By the time this video is recorded, even if it didn't begin in October, it probably began this month. Regardless, mass assembly is probably well underway, even if we can't confirm it. And the thing is, by the time we can confirm it, like let's say this data we get in a week or two is inconclusive because there's not really final units coming out, so it sort of seems like maybe mass assembly hasn't begun. But at that point, we might actually have the reveal of Switch 2 before we have the confirmation of mass assembly. Now, why does mass assembly matter? Outside of gathering up a large number of units to go into launch, another reason mass assembly matters is leaks. Usually once we get to the point of mass assembly, after a month or two of mass assembly, cell phone images from the damn manufacturing floor typically get posted online. Obviously, this might not happen, and there's no guarantee because it would require someone risking their job to do it, but it has happened many times in the past, and then I would suspect by January, some of these pictures would probably start to make it online. If Nintendo just reveals the system in early January, then I don't really think it's going to be that big of a problem, although the leaks could happen before the end of December. But then who knows? Maybe there's a tease at the Game Awards. We don't really know Nintendo's plan for the system. All we know is by the end of March, we should have seen the system. We already know a few key features for it, and now we have exact shipping data showing that, yeah, manufacturing is ramping the hell up. I mean, these are mass production numbers, like the kind of, like when you hear 800,000 units to one assembler, those are like the kind of numbers when you're projecting selling millions and millions and millions of units of something fairly soon. So I'm just saying that everything seems to be lining up. Whether or not it comes out in March, I don't know, but first half next year, I feel like if you want to make any sort of bet with your buddies, friendly bets, of course, friendly wagers, first half of next year versus second half of next year, that's the wager to make. So out by the end of June or out after June. Make that friendly wager. I'm not going to make that wager yet, but you guys know I do like to make my bets. So probably pretty soon we'll have a bet in place for first half of next year or not. A lot of you guys will probably want me to be like, how about you bet for a January reveal? And I'll be like, man. Depends on what the bet is. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am the Daniel Robo-Jets from Nintendo Prime. And as always, folks, I'll catch you guys in the next video.